Greetings in Jesus' wonderful name and welcome to Riverside Chats. I began a series on Rebecca and I want to continue with that series today. Rebecca is the wife of Isaac. She is the mother to the twin boys, Esau and Jacob. She's sister to Laban. We are looking at the positive traits or the positive characteristics of Rebecca. Today, if someone's name's Rebecca, we call him Becca. I have a niece who's called Becca. We'll focus on this fact today, that Rebecca was strong. She was physically strong. How do we know she was physically strong? She was not afraid of work. Now, there are some women who are lazy. There are some men who are even lazier. They're afraid of work. Some people are smart, but they are not good at physical work. Work that involves labor. But Rebecca was strong. She was not afraid of work. She volunteered to water all the camels. Now, a camel can drink a lot of water, as I mentioned in the last episode. It could drink up to 20 gallons of water. Now, this is not 20 liters, it's 20 gallons. There's about 5 liters in 1 gallon. So if you do the math, if there were 10 camels, each needed 20 gallons of water. You're talking about 200 gallons of water. Now that must have taken a long time. While she was drawing the water and watering the camels, Eliezer looks at her. I'm sure he's full of glee and full of excitement because God answered his prayer so quickly. You remember, he made a prayer to God. He said, God, the first young lady that comes to me, I'm going to ask for water. If she obliges, and if she volunteers, and she says, I'll water your camels too after your journey, that one will be the bride for Isaac. Now, that is called a fleece. We put a fleece before the Lord. You remember Gideon, he said, Lord, well, if you're really leading me, then I'm praying that the fleece, that the sheepskin be dry with no dew at all, and dew would be on all the ground. And then he went the next day and said, Lord, do the opposite. Only the fleece be full of dew, and it be dry all on the ground. Now, some people will just open the Bible and say, Lord, give me a word from God. I did that when God called me to the ministry. But it's sometimes dangerous to do that. God used it. Sometimes he uses our not so wonderful ways to reveal his will. God was calling me to the ministry. I was 17 years old, and I wanted a call from God. And I said, Lord, I'm going to open the Bible, and the first passage that comes to mind, may it be the passage that you use to call me. And then I read in Matthew's gospel, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself, take up the cross and follow me. If you save your life, you lose it. But if you lose your life for my sake and for the gospel's, you shall find it. I was contemplating Bible college at that time, but I needed direction from God that this was his call. I remember I was in high school, and I talked so much about the Lord that even my teachers asked me, "Are you going into ministry?" So I would tell them I didn't know, because I had received no call from God. Now, when I say a call from God, it's not like God's going to come to me and say, "Well, Charles, I want you to go to the ministry." No, you have a sense of calling. God speaks through a variety of ways. He speaks through His word. He speaks through circumstances. He speaks through other people. And sometimes it's a combination of all of that coming together. Abraham was a man of faith, and he knew God would provide a bride for his son Isaac. He knew that God would provide a good bride too. And he had given instructions to Eliezer. By making a vow, Eliezer had to put his hand under the thigh of Abraham. He had to swear an oath that he would not allow Isaac to marry a Canaanite woman. God abhorred. God considered it terrible, looking at all the practices of the Canaanites. They would throw babies into the fire. They were involved in child sacrifice. They would do terrible things. And God wanted them alienated from the land, and the land given to Israel. God gave the parameters for the land. Now you might say, "Well, it was their land." No, it's God's land. All of it is. He stepped it out and marked it there. You know, much question is about the land and the Israelites taking other people's land. No, it was their land. Israel is the only nation that had the same land for 3,000 years, had the same religion for 3,000 years, had the same language for 3,000 years, worshiped the same God for 3,000 years. Remember, Abraham came from Ur of the Chaldees. Abraham was a heathen worshiper. He worshipped the sun and the moon. Rebekah watered all of the camels by going back and forth. She made many trips, multiple trips, from the well where she drew the water to where she fed the camels. Rebekah was a hard worker, and she was physically strong. My thoughts go to my grandmother, my paternal grandmother. She came from Tamilian stock, which means she was Tamil. And her brothers were pretty tall. Most Indian people are short or shorter. But my dad was quite a tall man, way taller than me. I'm 5'7", 5'8". My sons, two of them, are 6'2" and 6'3". My grandson is almost as tall as his father. So we have some tall people in our family. But my grandmother was very strong. She worked as a supervisor for women who worked in the sugarcane fields. Our forebears came as indentured laborers from India to work in South Africa. By that time, slavery was abolished, and the ingenious English invented a new form of slavery, and that was called indentured laborers. It was indenture. It was a glorified form of slavery. You had more freedom like slaves, but yet you worked like slaves. You worked from sunrise to sunset. You were given rations, treated a little better. You were no one's property. But I came from that stock, came from very humble beginnings. It's amazing how one people would subjugate another people. just by basis of the color of their skin. It's amazing that India has now become richer than Great Britain. India is poised to be the third richest nation in the world. When the British came to India, India was very prosperous. Estimation has it that the British colonial powers siphoned $45 trillion out of India in today's money. My grandmother was physically strong. She was not afraid of anybody, but she was also a very gentle and wonderful lady. We talked about Rebecca today, that how Rebecca was physically strong. She was a hard worker. Now, what I'm sharing on is based on the book of Genesis. We are looking at Genesis, and I want you to do the reading. You might say, well, you never read from the Bible. Everything I shared was based from the Bible, but it's an elongated chapter. And I want you to do the reading yourself. You need to read Genesis 24 following. Genesis 24 up to Genesis 29 is the whole story of Rebecca. I took one lesson where we just looked at all the verses regarding Rebecca. Now, I know there's some people who think they are so good, and they look at people's programs and they condemn people by saying, well, they don't use any scripture verses, they don't do that, and they talk about this and that. Hey, listen, you are no man's judge. You don't have a program of your own. You are there to pick on other people. I'm convinced about what I'm saying is biblically based, totally biblically based. And if you are such a person and you're listening to my program and you don't like it, don't listen to it. Have your own program, since you're so perfect. Because I know there's some people like that, but I thank God for all of my listeners. I'm teaching you Bible from the Bible, but we have to relate it to life. And sometimes the greatest authentication you have is your own experience with your own family. And I make no apologies for using illustrations from my family and from life. They are very brief. God bless you and love you.